Good morning and welcome to Plymouth's Sunday Forum. It's wonderful to see those of you with us in person and also those of you with us online. We have a special day today. We have the opening of Gabe Jewell's art exhibition in the gallery in collaboration with the Fine Arts Committee. And we have his father, Richard, who collaborates with him, talking to us about his art and its connection to Richard's meditationary website and his lifelong interest in meditation. Richard has been meditating for some 60 years, and if you haven't been to his website, Meditationary, I certainly recommend it. One can spend hours in that place and never repeat. We celebrate the fact that both Richard and Gabe are members of Plymouth, and this is very special to have them with us. We are sorry to report that Lynette Black, who would have been introducing Jewel and Gabe, is down with COVID today, but we hope that she will return very quickly to us and a little bit about Richard will tell us a little bit about its relation to meditation. Gabe, thank you.
Hi. So this is art show we got going. Yeah. My dad, his website Meditationary, it's pretty cool. I've gone through and browsed through it numerous times. And he's put a lot of my visual art on it, so it's kind of cool to. I think it kind of adds like a family type element because it kind of connects it a little more. But I'm glad everybody came. I don't have quite as much to say on this subject. I guess meditation's still a fairly introverted thing for me, so I don't necessarily talk a lot about it. But and something that people have brought up, and I agree, is that art, like visual art, is often a form of meditation. It's pretty solitary type thing. Unlike musicians, for example, they get to get together and jam guitars and stuff. A lot of times artists end up doing it alone, which turns into kind of this constant meditation. Yeah, I guess that's all I had to say. Turn it over to my dad.
Hello, everybody. As Jackie mentioned, I've been doing meditation for many, many years, about 60. So I'm only, 30 years old, so I started at negative 30. My former life, before I retired a few years ago, I was a college teacher of writing and literature. So I've done a lot of teaching too, and even started using meditation in some of my classes. And the students were kind of excited to do it, as long as they didn't have to do it for too long. So appreciating art and looking at art are both, and not to, well, I'm not going to say anything about making visual art, but I've been a story writer for many, many years too. So to some extent, making art are separate from meditation. And Gabe doesn't like to talk a lot about what his paintings and drawings mean, if my wife Ann Ludlow and I ask, he will say, well, what do you think it means? So Gabe, as I think good artists should, wants people to respond in their own way rather than creating a story for them. They can try to see the story that they think Gabe has made, and sometimes the titles help, or they can, just find their own story. And that is one of the big things that art can do for us in terms of being a bridge between what we typically call art and what we typically think of as meditation is storytelling. And there are two ways in which storytelling help us connect. So a story is basically a person or people having some kind of problem, or perhaps there's a villain. So a person with a problem, and then a solution. Hopefully there's a solution. In a tragedy, there's not always a solution. There's the offer of one, or it's the worst possible one, but there's still a solution in some sense. So person, problem, and solution. Well, in that very process itself, whether you're looking at paintings and drawings, because most of us are looking for some kind of story, or whether you're talking about short stories or novels or any other form of art, we are tending to think in terms of person, problem, and solution. I'm a great admirer of dance too. And you see the idea of if you start trying to understand what the dance moves mean, you're asking yourself, what's the problem? That in meditation is something that you can break down into the separate parts and choose one of those parts to meditate upon. And I'm going to give you an example. We're going to get up and look at the art together in a minute here. There's an even deeper way in which art helps us meditate. The great mystics, all the great mystics, tell us about finding that central core, that spark of God within, or the sense of being God from outside somewhere. And that is the central core of their mysticism. Everything else that happens, they say that is secondary in terms of focusing on that central being or spark of God within us. Even if you're an agnostic, science now, a number of research studies now tell us that human beings are capable, all human beings are not only capable, but it's good for them to have some kind of spiritual or mystical experiences or spiritual mystical life within themselves, because the brain is capable of that. The heart and the gut are capable of that. So even if you don't believe in God at all, it still works. But in that storytelling, in that splash of color and design and the innate movements of dance, etc., where we have a person, a problem, or solution, or maybe one of them, or maybe two of them, there is that sense of what is this doing within me? My I, my central aware self. How can this work of art, and this is a meditation perspective, it's not an art critic perspective, how can this work of art bring me to a deeper understanding of myself? Which is a lot of why we look at art. I mean, we look at it for its beauty, that's one way. Actually, the beauty aspect, that is something that the great mystics experience, most of them. A sense of beauty. And so the sense of beauty that we get from art, I like to think of as kind of a chip off the old mystic block of something that's also called bliss or joy in mystic language. And the same is true. My wife won't take me to concerts anymore because after about somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes, there's something in the music that just is so beautiful. I sit there and just am uplifted so much. And so much so that I start crying, in fact. And then about 20 minutes after that, I'm worn out and I fall asleep. And sometimes she has to nudge me because I start snoring. So, so great music. I'm good for it for maybe 45 minutes. Shakespeare, that's a different matter. But what so again, the beauty aspect of art, all arts, is I think a chip off the block of ultimate bliss and joy. So that in itself is worth pursuing. I mean, I'm saying basically, you can go find an arm or a leg of God by just going and viewing art. You know? So think about that when you go home. Think about God in your experiencing of the art, in experiencing the beauty. And think about what would happen if you follow up all the way up God's arm or all the way up God's leg that he's letting you see to God's heart. In other words, don't forget that experience. Don't go home and just say, I had a great experience today. Let me tell you all about the art. Also go home if you want and meditate upon the feeling of that beauty. That is a very legitimate method of meditating, to meditate upon a memory of something that we have had that was especially beautiful or especially loving, for that matter, or especially peaceful or especially strong in that positive way that strength sometimes can feel. Another, beyond just the beauty, is the question of where is my deepest center, the center that is just pure awareness, what the mystics call the spark of God within. And I'm talking all the way from the Easterners, the Eastern mystics, who say it all over the place. Atman, Purusha, a number of other names. To the Westerners like Thomas Merton and Teilhard de Chardin and others who talk about the spark of God within, that is our deepest self. When we look at art, we can sort out what kind of feelings it gives us, but we also can ask, who's the person looking at this? And how am I, in my deepest sense of being an aware person, perceiving this? What are the different ways that I am perceiving this? Let's see if we can get at that a little bit more closely by looking at some of the art. So let's start over on the right, and why don't you all get up and come on over and see I talk about a few, two or three of these pieces. And first I need to offer my apologies to God, to Gabe, and to all the rest of you, because I'm going to be offering some of the feelings that I get from the art, and you may not get these feelings. Tree in front. But the sense of distance in itself is something that I feel when I look at it, and I can back off from that sense of distance and just note that that is what I'm feeling. And maybe I'm getting a sense of darkness. I don't know if that darkness is night or if it's some kind of darker scenario or what. But I can also see that, identify it as different from the distance, and then back off and just kind of hold that sense of the darkness in my mind while I look at the art. And once again, let me do a disclaimer. I'm not trying to teach you to look at art only in this way that I'm suggesting now, in a meditative way. You can look at it in all kinds of ways, and it's still good. But if you want to look at it in a meditative way, that is the way to do it, is to back off, identify the feelings that it brings up in you, and separate those feelings. And then just hold one of those at a time. Even if you only do that for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, it can give you a better sense of your own inner landscape. So the landscape from the painting goes to the landscape within you, and you are helping learn the landscape within you from looking at the landscape of the painting. Okay? Now this top one up here is one of my favorites of Gabe's, and I think that's probably because it's so light-filled. I have no idea what the couple was talking about. The guy on the left looks suspiciously like Gabe. And I've been meaning one of these days to ask him if that's one of his friends whom I happen to know. But, you know, the whole thing fills me with sort of a healing light. And so it's a very beautiful painting to me in that regard. And there are all kinds of other details that are interesting. But if I want to meditate upon it, rather than, which I often do with art, read the title, start looking at all the different elements, you know, I bet you at least half of the people, maybe all of us, can sort of have an art appreciation class in college or something. What you do, you look at all the details, try to pull it all together and make some assumptions, which is all intellectual process. But for a meditative process, look at the major feeling it gives you, and then just hold that in your mind, your heart, your gut. So you'll sink in, just let it sink in, like you're bathing in a baby's feeling. That will help you meditate upon it as opposed to just merely enjoy the beauty, which is certainly a very valid and even meditative aspect in itself, and as opposed to intellectualizing it, enjoying it for a minute or two, and then trying to intellectualize what you're seeing, maybe even trying to remember it, so you can describe it or remember it later using intellectual tools. Okay, let's go over to the other side here. I think these ones on this wall are the best to show you today because there's so much light coming on. You can see it. This one is my wife, Ann Ludlow's, one of her favorites of Gabe's. By the way, there are something like 74 works of art here on the walls, and we were unable to put up another 16. So, and that's getting close to Gabe's total opus. He probably has another 10 or so in other places. But for Ann, and again, I do an interpretation that probably has nothing whatsoever, or may have nothing whatsoever to do with what Gabe was processing when he was painting. And sometimes as an artist, as a story writer, you process things not even knowing what you're doing. You just, I have 2 or 3 of my best short stories that I just stared at the paper for half an hour. And then I started scribbling words, and the words were totally nonsense. And then I started seeing some words make sense, and then I started seeing the character make sense. And then I started seeing an actual story unfold. And there was so much wrong with stories. And I would have to throw away the first page or page and a half of them because it was just nonsense. So, but sometimes I've got another fiction piece that I am planning way ahead, and yet another where I am using a structure that's already set by historical events. So who knows how the mind of the artist, him or herself, works. But Anne's interpretation of this is an ecological interpretation. I look at it, I assume what it means is the world is drowning. Water is everywhere. The space is almost covered up. Worldwide water is rising. So, meditatively, rather than give this take off with that political or ecological interpretation, meditatively, what's the feeling that you get from that? What is that feeling? Focus on that feeling. In fact, most modern psychologists now will say that when you are having a problem, internal problem, feelings that you can't get rid of, you focus on it. And the reason you should do that, according to modern psychology, which is very parallel to ancient medieval Eastern yoga and Buddhist practices too, is to have someone there to help you through remembering. In the case of ancient Eastern practices, and even modern ones, the person you have with you close by is a guru, so you can go through tough things. Meditation, it's not all happy birds singing in real life. As you go deeply into meditation, you're going to confront your own problems. In modern psychology, the pillar of that is having psychologists around while you delve into your problems. But you're supposed to look at your feelings with the help of your psychologist. Well, that's what you do with a painting that's troubling too, if you want to do it meditatively. What is the feeling? For me, it is a feeling that I sometimes get in varying ways. That's sometimes it feels like I'm on the edge of freaking out or something because the whole world is gradually, very slowly, like the frog in the pot of water that slowly gets hotter and it doesn't know. The world is getting hotter and more drowned. So it's healthy for me as a person, actualizing that, which I also do, and I write about it sometimes. But it's healthy for me to just look at it, hold it, as you would an image or a word in your mind, perhaps, if you're trying to meditate, hold the feeling and look at it. And it gives you a lot more power over that feeling at the start. It also gives you a lot more knowledge or understanding of that feeling. And all this happens in meditation if you take a feelings. And so you have to clear those, make those more peaceable. And the only way to do that is to face them. You can't just flick them away like that. Not until you're really, really advanced meditator, apparently, whatever it is you do. Toss them away by diving into the things you've learned in meditation. But by that point, you've already gone through all. pay the price, the ticket. So if we look at that one up there, that but for me, it's the elongated limbs and the peacefulness that I like. So that is for me a step toward feeling greater peace within myself. And if I focus on that feeling of peace within myself, then on the right day, not every day, but on the right day, I can use that to build into a greater sense of peace coming to me. And whether that comes from within you or outside of you, doesn't matter. Great peace, great love, bliss, joy, great what we call inner truth strength. All these are what St. Paul calls the gifts of the Spirit. What the Old Testament lists in a couple, one or two places as gifts of the Spirit. And what the great meditation, the great mystics, great meditation masters talk about too. And 2,000 years ago, Patanjali, some people pronounce his name Patanjali, wrote the Yoga Sutras, which was the yoga manual. He took all the practical advice, strained it out of several thousand pages of ancient Hindu scripture, put it all in a short little manual that could be memorized in about 200 chants. And he says in his chapter 1 of 4 chapters that there are multiple ways you can approach what you need to approach with a clear mind. For him, it is gaining a clear mind that gets you really going. He names things that are internal, even hot exercises. That's a direct quote from Sanskrit to English, hot exercise, hot action. I probably should use that phrase, though, should I have some hot exercise, even that, or you can go without, and he says you can experience God. That's the way to do it. So there are multiple ways, and there always have been, according to many mystics, especially the Eastern ones, but to some extent the Western ones too, to find your spark within you that is your true self, pure, just simple awareness, nothing more, or to find that same awareness in the universe outside of it. There are many methods to do it. So holding on to some of these classic feelings, such as joy, peace, etc., that's just fine. That's not only fine. It's advisable if that's what works for you. Meditation, be a successful meditator. It's not mean you have to go out in the desert for 4 years, or go in your bathroom for 4 years and see nobody. And that's only good if you have 2 bathrooms. You, on the other hand, if you engage in life around you too much, without thinking, without feeling about it, without examining it, then that's a distraction. And that kind of distraction not only applies to the classic kinds of things that, especially, well, both Western and Eastern mystics you see are yoga practitioners and meditation practitioners, etc. St. Augustine, he famously said he was a wild, rich young man who did all kinds of stuff that we wouldn't approve of. And then he made a prayer to God that he wrote down. He said, "Dear God, please give me chastity," or something like that. "Give me chastity, but not quite yet. He needed some time to get used to switching over to my lifestyle. So it's not just the things that are bad for meditation. It's not just wild drinking, wild drugs, wild sex. It's everything that draws us away from looking at the true self or being, whether that's internal or external. So if I spend many hours researching something that is just an intellectual interest to me, then that's distracting me from the internal path. Now this is not rocket science. It's enough to make me sometimes wonder, oh man, do I have to think of God again today? You know, I've been so good about it the last 30 minutes. Can I quit now? It's going to drive me absolutely crazy. The answer is yes, quit, wait another day. But you know, really, that worry that we have, that stubborn resistance, is often kind of just a thin sheen that looks like a hard wall. And you can just pull through with one finger and just go ahead and do what you don't want to do anyway when it comes to thinking about your true self or external being. So let's go to here's another one that looks very, very suspiciously like the artist. We have an art here. But this is one of Gabe's earliest. Is it high school? This one? Yeah. He won some awards in high school too. One of them was in an adult contest, in fact, in the Rochester area. But that one, I have always liked it because it makes me aware of how jumbled and busy my mind can get. And if I were to look at that one in the wrong way for too long, I couldn't take it. It would bother me too much. Because it would start coming inside me and getting me all churned up and everything. But rather, what I see it as a great representation of that very feeling within me that I need to learn to deal with. So, when troubles are within you, sure, you can talk them out, you can write them out, and all this helps. But all of that is a process that is actually somewhat meditative, and you can do it somewhat faster sometimes by using meditation. And just say, that feeling is right here in front of me, and I'm going to jump into it for a little bit, but keep myself intact and look at, again, how it makes me feel. And I'm going to just hold myself into that, kind of like being in a womb, and let it rumble all around and through me. But I'm not going to be affected because I'm just watching it. And after a while, sometimes it takes a few minutes, sometimes it might take a few minutes each day for months. I'm going to be the owner of that feeling and not the slave of it. And that's one of the great things that art meditation can do for us. Okay.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Of your son?
Yes. Now, I don't have a Q&A now. Should we return to our regular chairs, or are you guys?
That's fine, but I can't say that a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you doing any kind of meditation process yourself before you're doing your artwork?
Just like to clear out a little bit. It's all kind of interrelated for me, so I don't have a spot where I sit down and meditate these days because I get myself, through artwork and light writing and all this stuff. So I don't know.
You're sort of in a meditative
state. Yeah, it's not really following any kind of meditation.
Yeah. Not any structure.
Yeah.
Because your work is so detailed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of what it ends up being a very still place where it takes a long time, so I'm just kind of there
Before anyone else asks a question, I just want to let you know that I made a decision several years ago when I retired and realized I was going to get ever more deeply in meditation, that I wasn't going to get into any trouble with anyone, not a boss, nor my wife, or anyone else if I just started becoming honest about all my experiences with meditation. So I've actually started teaching, and I'm quite willing to answer personal questions about my meditation too, if you do have questions of that nature. So, other questions for Dave about the art, or for me about meditation? What questions have come up in your head while you're listening to everything I hear?
I got a question about the media that you use. And I wasn't here for the first 2 minutes. But can you just kind of give a sense of the types of media? I mean, all paint, chalk, etc.
Paint, I started out for years all acrylic paint. About I was doing some color pencil for a while, then I moved almost solely to color pencil for about a decade, which was a bunch of easels. And then lately and then I moved to pen, like that one, pen down, pen, or marker. So and I still do. Lately I do mostly pen or marker and color pencil, and then painting more and more lately. So basically it's acrylic paint, color pencils, and markers.
And so some of these, and I'm not an artist, I don't, some of these are, what is this? Is this colored pencil? I don't know if it's chalky.
That's color pencil.
Okay. Colored pencils are not chalky, they're oily. Yeah.
A little bit oily. There are a couple different types. That one up there is the middle part is colored pencil, and the outer rim is markers. The yellow and green one.
Those of you at home, just a quick note. If you use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, you can ask any questions of Richard or of Dave. And those of you here, if you have questions for either of them, we can entertain those at this point. Richard, I have one. You've studied and taught a wide range of subjects, certainly English and writing, but also many types of religion and spirituality.
A little bit religion and spirituality. Those were in the early days when I was still hunting for a permanent place to teach at. So I ended up teaching. I was considered a composition specialist. I taught that a lot and loved doing so. And then I taught, each year I also taught literature and an introductory course to the humanities. Since then, I have taught meditation in three, these are usually one afternoon session or one evening session in 3 colleges and 2 community education programs a few times. But the pandemic has slowed me down quite a bit with that. That's one of the big reasons I'm looking forward to it being over. That and going to movies and regular theaters in the evenings again. So, more questions? Sure. So the question is, have I done any artwork myself? Thanks, Sally. Uh, I did one piece of visual art for my art appreciation class in freshman year of college, and I felt very, very lucky to get a B on it. No, I've been more of a story writer. So I've written several books. I have one online, and I've written a lot of short stories, some of which have been published. Mhm.
Type of media that you would use would more relaxing for you to use compared to another, or does it just totally depend on the mood at the time?
I just what's that? Oh, so the question is one of the media styles do I find more relaxing to do and more at ease? Um,
And I'm saying the media per se, not the style.
right. Yeah. I guess if I'm just relaxed, I would say colored pencil tends to be the simplest. And I think some of it, the reason I moved to colored pencil from painting is because painting takes so long to set up, and every time you need to mix the paint up, instead of you can just grab the pencil. And pen is actually kind of similar. It's real easy going. I just grab markers and go. So I'd say color pencil probably is I feel the most at ease with if I'm just relaxing.
I'd like to apologize to those of you who are viewing this on the web for not looking at you one time when I was talking. So I'm looking at you now. Any questions from the web or any more up here?
Yes, and we have none right now, so it allows me to ask another one. You've told us that you've been meditating for some 60 years. How has your meditation changed over that period?
When I started meditating, I did not know I was officially meditating. I was, my dad had a farm. I worked on it every summer. And I was eager to, as a young boy, be able to start driving that tractor like all my friends did. And, I was like 12 or 13. And what nobody ever told me, not my friends, not my father, was how boring it is to drive up and down for a quarter mile or even a half mile at a time, then turn around. The end is the excitement when you get to turn around. And then you come back. There's only so long you can try to identify the birds that are following you or the cloud formations. And so I started doing what I called mind experiments. And they involved, instead of just letting my mind go, I would think about specific problems or people. And after doing that for, I don't know, a year maybe, on the tractor in the summers and a little bit in the spring and fall, I discovered that I could focus on a person or even an object of interest and just let that stay in my focus, and all kinds of thoughts and feelings would come to it. So that was very different from the rational step-by-step process that I was used to. And even with the rational step-by-step process, that's a minor way of doing yoga in one branch of yoga, jnana yoga, which is intellectual yoga. But certainly the focusing on an object or person and letting thoughts come and feelings come to me, that is clearly a little bit deeper into actual meditation practices. So I was doing that for several years, and then, I tried different things, read up on it some. went through some experiences that were fairly deep related to meditation in my first year of college. And it was not until I had a class in Hindu religion in my third year of college that I started doing the kind of meditation that I had done most of the time throughout the rest of my life. And that is to focus on a specific point on or near my body. And my third year of college, I learned to focus in my heart, or my heart center. Have you heard of the Kundalini and the chakras, energy centers? Well, that's related to them. And then several years later in grad school, I started focusing above my head. And most of the years I've spent when I do meditation, and in other situations now too, my focusing is way beyond just simple formal half hour here and half hour there types of things. Going to sleep, waking up, I'm doing it. I confront somebody who might be a drug dealer on the street. I do my meditation. That's because I learned in class when one of my students does something that's weird or crazy in front of everybody, and I have to figure out what the heck to do, that the best way to handle it is to go above everyone's head slightly. And I focus above everybody's head, and then the words just come to me without my having to make something up intellectually. So I do that whenever there's a problem or trouble. But it's still mostly above my head and variations of that. Or lately, for months now, I've been going into actually the center of my heart itself, which I was scared to do for literally decades. I was afraid I might stop my heart or something. But it didn't stop. When I finally did it, instead it helps me go to sleep, I've discovered, which is what almost all meditation did for about 15 years or so. I'd officially sit down to meditate, and it would just make me fall asleep. So I had to learn to meditate while I was walking. So I do a lot of walking meditation too, usually in nature if at all possible. You can do bathtub meditation. You can do it, in the middle of having someone yell at you, if you can just remember to do it. There are all kinds of times to do it. Another question? We got 3 minutes or so. Yes.
How do you combine focusing on your feeling, looking at a painting, and focusing on the point above your head, or focusing on some issue that you're dealing with your life?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great question, because it helps me explain something that I have not explained yet. That is, when you go to whatever point in or on your body or above it, or try to get a feeling from, like you're in nature and you're having a sense of God's there somewhere. This all, you don't stay exactly there. You go in and out of it. And sometimes when you go out of it, it's wasted time, but sometimes when you go out of it, it takes you back into whatever you were looking at or whatever your concern is, and helps you understand that feeling. And if it's bad, get rid of it. If it's good, enhance it. So if I look at a painting and I'm going to meditate, then I go above my head. And then when I go above my head, I don't know what's going to happen except from practice and experience, but it's going to either take me back into the painting or the feeling I'm getting from the painting, or it's going to distract me because I need to go eat or something like that, or I'm running out of time. So it's Jesus saying, look at the birds of the field. They don't care. I'm just paraphrasing now. I can't remember the exact quote, but so be like them. Just trust in God, whatever your connection with God is, and do that. And it's a scary thought at first because you think, oh, geez, he's going to send me into the middle of George Floyd Square during a protest, or he's going to send me out into the desert, you know. But my experience with giving to God, being true self, is that it takes you some unusual places, but places that you're meant to go that you mostly will enjoy or will help you get to a point where you can enjoy them. And they're not totally adverse to your own personality, actually. That your own growth and personality has been building up to discovering the true self or being, and then living that life.
Thank you so very much. Yes, thank you. You've given us some great insights. Be sure to return after the 11 o'clock service today, when the official reception for Gabe's exhibition will be held, and he will be here to answer any more questions you have, and I suspect Richard will be here too. And so a big day, and certainly do come back for the reception. And watch your Friday email for the next Sunday forum.